Shalom, giving all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Chakodash, double honors unto the elders and apostles, the great millstone of all well, and shalom to you, Arkim, that are pushing this word around the globe with faith and truth and sincerity. I'm the Baba Caleb from the GMS London Forecasters Camp, coming back with another lesson, Lord willing, to help edify the Lord's elect. As always, I like to start by saying that we are the real Hebrew Israelites, the real Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Hispanics, Native Americans, West Indians, and West Africans predominantly. However, you are going to find Israelites that do look like the other nations, because we as a people have been scattered amongst all nations throughout our various captivities. But if your seed line by your forefathers goes back to the man in the Bible that was named Israel, then you too are an Israelite, no matter what you may look like, because the book of Numbers, chapter 1 and verse 18 states that your nationality is determined by the lineage of your forefathers. And once again, the names we give reverence unto are Yahweh, which is the name of the God of the Bible. His name is Yahweh, which means he is or he exists. He is the Ancient of Days. And his son's name in the Hebrew is Yahweh Shai, whose name means he saves or he delivers, which is the name of the one that the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. So I just want to do a lesson because I stumbled across something I found very interesting. So something that I'm into personally, like one of my interests is I like to collect toys, modern toys, vintage toys. I just love the whole thing of I've always loved it ever since I was a child. And so I was born in the 80s, and in the 1980s that was kind of like the golden era for children's cartoons and toy lines and entertainment and things like that. So as I said, I was born in the beginning of the 80s, so I experienced a lot of that stuff when I was growing up, and it stuck with me even to this day. So it's just one of my interests that I've always been very passionate about. So I was looking up some vintage figures for a toy line called Thundercats. Some of you may remember the cartoon Thundercats, great cartoon. And I never had many of the toys from that particular line when I was growing up, but recently I've been looking at, just investigating, seeing what's available, and I remembered a character from the show, and they actually made a toy of this character, and this toy that you see on the screen here, this character is called Mongo. Now, as a child, you watch the show and you just take it at face value, but obviously now I'm a grown adult and I have the understanding of the scriptures. I can see this for what it actually is, and there's quite a few toys that are actually very demonic, which maybe if the Spirit's willing, I will actually do videos on it, breaking some of them down. But I'm going to break down this one here, because this is a character from the show Thundercats called Mongo. But as you can see, this is a character of a demon that has a goat's head and the body of a man, but the feet of a beast. Right now, this looks very familiar. Many of you who in the truth will understand that this looks very similar to another character, a demon, let's say. If I go here, it looks very much like this demon which Esau gives reference unto, named Baphomet. If I go to the images, you will see this is a similar depiction of the toy I just showed. Now, that toy was made in about 1986, 87 maybe, because the Thundercats show came out about 1985 or 1986. So this is the image of Baphomet. Now, this statue depicts these children looking up to this demon. Now, look at it, right? The children are on eye level to the demon. They are looking up to this demon and reverencing this demon, right? So here you have Baphomet depicted with children, but yet, as I just showed, I'm not new tab, this toy from the toy line Thundercats, which was made by a toy company called LJN. This is a toy that children like myself would have played with in the 1980s. Now, as I said, I didn't have this particular figure myself, But I was just doing some research and I thought, hang on a minute, that's straight up Baphomet in an action figure form. So this photograph is from an eBay listing. There's any other angles here you can see it, and it comes with a scythe. Now, in mythology, or I suppose symbolism, what character is usually depicted as having a scythe like this? Usually it would be the Grim Reaper. And what does the Grim Reaper do? It harvests souls, right? So you've got this character, which is called Mongol, but it's really Baphomet, and it's depicted with the scythe, and it's targeted at the children. So this is very demonic. And I'm going to get a little bit of information on this character here. Where are we at? So if we go to here, you can see this character appears in Thundercats Season 1, Episode 19. And it says the Thunder Kittens. Now, in the show, you've got a couple of characters. You know, you've got the main characters like Lion-O, Panther, Tiger, Chitara. And you've got the two childlike characters, which are Wily Kit and Wily Cat, who are younger Thundercats, right? And I do remember watching this episode. So in this episode, it says the Thunder Kittens, the children of the team, accidentally release a demon that grows more powerful with fear. Now, this is the character how he looked in the cartoon. As you can see, again, depicted with the scythe, having the horns and the goat's head, but the male body. This is straight up Baphomet, and it says it grows more powerful with fear. Now, obviously, it feeds off the fear of the children. Now, if we go back to the image I just showed a moment ago, in the tab I had before, it's all very interesting because it all ties in. As you can see, these children who, this is how I would have looked. Well, is that a Jake child? I don't know, that could be an Afro. Well, this is how, I would have looked back in the day in the 80s, like many other children who were playing with toys. Now, obviously, if you don't have the discernment, you wouldn't be able to understand that certain things are demonic. Now, I didn't have all the understanding when I was a child, but I've always been interested in symbolism and, icons and mythology and stuff like that. I've just always had it. And storytelling and, things like that, films, all that kind of stuff, because I grew up watching a lot of films, playing with toys a lot, just, invoking my imagination. But there's certain toys that I did get as a child. When I actually got them, I was actually a bit shaken up. Like, hang on a minute, this is a bit demonic. Even as like a 4, 5, 6-year-old child, 3, 4, 5 year, 6-year-old child, I was able to just discern certain things. And maybe that's one of the reasons why I have such a interest for this topic. And, it's just something I'm really into. But the fact of the matter is, obviously, I didn't have all the understanding, but I did know that certain things were just a bit, oh, that's a bit weird, man. That's a bit, scary. So this statue of Baphomet was, let me get some information on it. If I go back to the previous page, it says this statue of Baphomet is a bronze sculpture commissioned by the Satanic Temple depicting Baphomet, a winged goat-headed humanoid symbol of the occult. Now, this is interesting, right? Because here's a connection that a lot of people don't make, which is a connection that I made as a child. You see, toys aren't actually toys. They're actually sculptures. They start off, they sculpt the figurine in wax or clay or whatever. Then they make molds of it. They cast it. They incorporate any mechanisms like, for action features, springs, things like that. And the toy gets produced, right? But really it starts off as a sculpture. So this little thing here, you could say, it's a little sculpture of the Baphomet demon. Now, this is not really any different to this statue of Baphomet, because this is just bigger. This is just bigger and more prominent. It's more visible. It's on a larger scale, and it's probably got a higher budget. Well, not probably, it definitely has a higher budget in terms of its production and, the artistry that goes into it. Although, with that being said, it's still evoking the same spiritual essence as this little thing here that probably ended up in a lot of children's homes, in their toy boxes and under their beds. You know, this little figure, you know, it's how do I say? It's giving reverence unto this image, although it's hidden in plain sight. Now, a lot of parents probably thought, oh, yeah, this is just a toy for my son or whatever. He'll play with it and have fun. But really, as I've said before, this whole world is steeped in wickedness. So therefore, you know, everything has pretty much been tainted with wickedness. It's like you think something that would be simple and innocent and for children, actually usually ends up having a much more demonic twist to it. So I haven't brought out any scriptures yet, but there's one main scripture that I think is going to be the focus of this lesson, right? So I'm going to get Ephesians, the 6th chapter. Because Esau's there's a scripture which says, train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. Now, we're supposed to do that on the right-hand side, in the sense that we're supposed to tell our children of how, you know, Yahweh delivered us from Egypt, and speak of the laws, statutes, and commandments, and meditate on the scriptures with our children. But Esau applies that principle or that scripture on the left-hand side, because he trains up a child in the ways of wickedness from the earliest point. That's why you're forced into the education system so young, and that you spend, 5 days a week there, 6 hours a day or whatever, 6 hours a day for 5 days a week. Most children spend more time in their school than they do with the actual parents, you know. So let me get that precept before I get to the next one. Bear with me. I'll just get the precept there. Proverbs 22 and verse 6 is what I want. This says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Read that again. Proverbs 22 and 6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Now, this toy is made for children, and obviously children are being introduced to this figure at a very early age. They're being introduced to the ways of Satanism and, you know, the principalities of Satanism. Now, I'll say this, right? I'm going to put this out there. Everything comes from the Most High, right? So when you see like some of these there's a lot of gross out toys that came out in the 80s. Things like that, you know, monsters, creatures, and all this kind of stuff. A lot of these things, you'd think that it's just a toy designer sitting there conjuring something up, but really it's coming from the Most High. And some of these things are actually based upon demons in the spiritual realm. Like, how do you say, you might think that, it's just it's something that a designer just sat there and conjured up out of their own mind. But really, there are creatures in the spiritual realm which actually look like these demons that they're getting the inspiration to create in plastic and sell to children as toys. So it's a very deep thing. I mean, it depends how deep you want to go into this on a spiritual level. You know, most people just take things purely at face value, when in reality, you know, these things could indeed exist. Like, for example, you know, I don't know if any of you are into the Alien films, the Xenomorph concept by H.R. Geiger. I mean, if you look at the artwork of H.R. Geiger, you will see a lot of demonic symbolism. Now, I can appreciate it on an artistic level. Maybe I'll do a video about it actually and show some stuff going into that. Actually, it'd be a very interesting video to do. But the fact of the matter is that there are certain higher level witches and warlocks on the left-hand side who are responsible for putting these things into popular culture, because that goes back to Madame Helena Blavatsky and the Alice Bailey and the externalization of the hierarchy, where their whole thing, because Helena Blavatsky was a high-level witch, and their whole thing was to try and bring Satanism into popular culture. Now, I could do a whole lesson going into that, and maybe, Lord willing, I will for the Spirit, but their whole thing was to make Satanism prevalent, visible, and accessible to the general public, to the point where everything becomes tainted with Satanism. So the fact that this toy was made is no surprise to me, because, as I said, Esau will train up a child in the ways of Satanism from the earliest point possible, so that when they grow older, they won't be able to identify Satanism from righteousness, because they're already too corrupted by the wickedness. Deep stuff. So I want to get Ephesians, the 6th chapter. Right, it says, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armour of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Now, a young child, they're very susceptible, man, because children don't really have much in terms of defence. And if their parents were not wise, then they're not going to be able to train their children up in the ways of being wise in light of the scriptures. So it says, put on the whole armour of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Here's the point. For you wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, and against spiritual wickedness in high places. So the spiritual wickedness is in all of the high places. As I demonstrated in my last lesson, we are surrounded by wickedness on every side. You know, we are as sheep in the midst of wolves. So it says, wherefore take unto you the whole armour of God, that may be able to stand in the evil day, having done all to stand. So what's the armour of God? Read on and we'll find out. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness. So what truth is that? The truth of these scriptures, the truth of understanding that we are living in a very demonic world, and we have to be wise to these things. You know, am I saying that a child can't play with a toy like this? Well, I'm not I'm not one of those people that would have been like, you know, throw out all your children's toys and burn them and all this kind of shit. But I don't have children myself, but if I did have children, I'd make them know what this figure actually is, where it's coming from, and what it represents. You know, you're not just going to put this thing in your child's toy box and just leave it there, and the child's just like, yeah, whatever, ignorant to what's being depicted. But you could use this as a way to teach the child that, hey, you know what, man, we are living in the midst of a wicked world. I don't know, maybe I'm as I said, I don't have children myself, but I suppose as a child growing up myself in the 80s, I was very discerning, and I suppose I was also encouraged to be discerning by my parents, although they didn't catch some of this stuff. You know, it just made me very curious and inquisitive, and it led me to being on the path I am now, where I am in the truth. So anyway, back to what I was saying, putting on the armor, because that's the important part, being able to recognize things and not being influenced by things without your awareness. Because most people, they're like, when it comes to entertainment, they switch their mind off and they allow themselves to be programmed, which is why it's called, you know, television programming. But if you can watch things with a discerning mind, you can have a defense against these things. So it says, stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, these scriptures, and having on the breastplate of righteousness. and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Here's the point. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith you shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. So things like this, toys like this, these are fiery darts of the wicked targeting your children. And they got a lot of children, I have to say. You know, just looking at the generation I came out of. Yeah, Satan done a good job there, man. Wrong one. It says, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. You know, so this is the sword of the Spirit. With the sword of the Spirit, you're able to slice through and get to the core of the matter. You know, and you're not going to be having your children, well, Lord willing, you know, if you were a child like me in the 80s, you're not going to end up doing this. And Lord willing, your children won't end up doing that either. And Lord willing, they'll have their eyes set upon Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. You see, if you ain't following Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, you're essentially following this. You know, and the generation I grew up with, they've gone after this, gone after the ways of Satan for the most part. Obviously, those of us who are in the truth now, by the grace of Yahweh, Bashem Yahweh Shai, you know, we've got level heads, but everybody else in the world, they're done. You know, they're bowing down to the image of the beast, and they're already like Satanists without even realizing it. You know, they might say, "Oh, well, I don't believe in God," or "Oh, I'm an atheist," or no. If you ain't an Israelite, you're done anyway. But if you're an Israelite and you're following after anything else, Christianity, you know, Islam, Hinduism, any of these other false doctrines, you're essentially following after this. Because all of these false philosophies, false doctrines, they're all of the devil. They're all of Satan. And then you can see the 5-point star on his forehead. More symbolism there, but we could get more into that stuff. And here you got the is it the caduceus? That's another lesson in itself. But you know, man, I'm not going to go too deep. I've made the point. So this statue, this is just a large scale version of this, which is just a small scale version. I mean, look at his eyes, man. It looks demonic anyway, man. You know, so it's just a small scale version of that, and it's all going back to giving energy onto the same spiritual principality. And if for those of you who are interested, as I said, if you watch Thundercats season 1 episode 19, you will see this character, and his whole purpose in this episode is to terrorize the Thunder Kittens and make them feel fear. And the more fear they feel, the more powerful he becomes. So that's very interesting. Just go here for a second. See a better picture of the character there. It says, Mongor is a goat-like demon who grows with power wherever he finds fear. The history of the character is that he was released from a tomb by Wily Kit and Wily Cat when they were exploring a ruined temple on Third Earth. He was later defeated by Lionel when it was discovered that the fear gives him power and bravery deprives him. He was resealed in his tomb and wasn't seen again for the rest of the series. There you go. Look, here you go. It says it right here, trivia. Mongor's overall appearance is heavily based on the real-life mythical figures of Baphomet and the mythological creature. Let me start that again. Mongor's overall appearance is heavily based on real-life mythical figures of Baphomet or the mythological creature, the satyr. There you go, and there's Mongor coming out of the flames. So there you go. And it's funny because it says he only appeared in 1 episode, and that's how Esau plays it. You know, sometimes he'll drop a truth bomb, but he'll put like, okay, you might sprinkle a little bit of sort of wickedness here and there, but every so often he'll put one thing that's just really, really just out there, demonic, and he'll push it out there and never do it again. And most people will never catch it, and it gets forgotten. You know, I'm sure when they were creating this show back in 1985 or whatever, 1985, they never thought that, you know, in 20 years or 30 years later, people will be talking about it on the internet. You know, the internet didn't exist in 1985, so they never thought that this would be brought up again. But guess what, man? Their wickedness hasn't gone unnoticed. So there, I'm just bringing it out. So yeah, maybe Lord willing, I'll do more videos of this nature on, you know, things that I find interesting in films or, you know, pop culture or whatever. Because there's a lot I've got to say about stuff like that, and maybe I'll do more videos like that if the spirit's with it. But you know, for now, Lord willing, that's been a little edifying lesson. So with that, giving all praises and all glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakakadash, double honors unto the elders and apostles of Great Millstone at all, and sincere shalom to you, Arkim, that are teaching this word around a globe of faith and truth and sincerity. And I'll catch you on the next lesson, Lord willing. Shalom for now.